Chapter 23 to 24. Fruel silently watched as Hanami inspected the corpse, her eyes a bright shifting blue as magic permeated in the air. He could see his fellow elves staring at her, awed at those unnaturally enchanting eyes. Mystic eyes of myriad perception, she'd called it, explained that it allowed her to view something in great detail, analyzing the traits of the inspected item. There was obviously more to it, but he didn't see it fit to simply demand more information, especially considering how tremendous her help has been in this perplexing case. But names held in them power, each letter used to spell them imbued with magical properties gained from the world. The moment he heard those words, his mind pounded, and he remembered feeling heavy, as if an invisible force was oppressing him. Casual she might be in mentioning it, but those eyes of her definitely aren't normal. If simply thinking the name caused such a feeling, then how strong are those eyes truly? Fruel sighed, shaking his head free of those thoughts. In the end, none of that mattered. With yesterday over, and with the girl becoming the first ever human citizen of the Elven capital, she now could freely enter and exit as much as she liked, not that such restrictions seemed to stop her from entering on her own leisure the day before. After all, who can be so in tune with the obelisks, that they can simply teleport from one to another without much thought? Powerful artifacts they may be, but they don't hold that function, or at least, that was what it seemed. It seems like there is no shortage of mysteries to still uncover. Either ways, while Hanami was granted her citizenship, he'd been tasked with monitoring her. Understandable, seeing as she was literally an unknown, with no previous records of one called Tsunaka Hanami ever being mentioned. He knows she's strong, he'd seen a facet of her strength himself, but for someone that strong to remain unknown like this? The caution is understandable. But, for some reason, he doubts this act of vigilance would do anything. Somewhere deep within his mind, something shouted for him to never oppose her. It's a deeply ingrained instinct, a feeling born from being in the presence of hundreds of individuals that could probably flatten him in seconds. The girl gave off the same feeling. And yet, her aura was concealed, giving nothing away. From the outside, she looked like any normal civilian human, perhaps more as a scholar with the suit she is wearing now, a sword maiden if you've perhaps witnessed her finesse with the blade. She looks completely normal. That's even more frightening. Hanami leans in slightly, her brows furrowed as her lips curved to a small frown. That's kinda amazing actually. Have you found something, Hanami? He asks back, and Hanami turns to him, her eyes returning back to the original light green. She cups her chin, considering her words carefully before shrugging. Seems like your fellow elves discovered some weird monster down there. It looks like some weird Rafflesia monster with vines and stuff. It attacked, your elves killed it, and it spewed out spores. Nothing happened for a while, your affinity with nature protecting you from whatever those spores caused, until it suddenly evolved to become magical, took over some elves, made them kill other elves, and the rest is history. Rafflesia? Fruel frowns. That's not a name he'd ever come across. Hanami seems to realize this as well, as she quickly explains. It's basically a giant colorful flower that smells terrible. Usually found in tropical forests. Not too important right now. But Hanami purses her lips. That's it. Fruel blinks, surprised. That's it? Have you not found enough just from this short session? No, you see, my eyes can see beyond that. It can look into the past of pretty much anything I see if I put my effort in. Fruel gapes slightly at the implication. That's not just analyzing by that point, the elf wants to shout, but he holds himself back. But when I try to look for the flower's past, I see nothing. She continues. Is that not normal? Not at all. Hanami immediately replies. Even something like dirt has history to it. Using my eyes, I can see who stepped on it the last, when it first found itself there, and other stuff, but that flower's history is empty, almost as if it was made on that spot in an instant, which is bad, or there's something else at play, which is even worse. They lapse into silence for a moment, each busy with their own thoughts at the new discovery. There's no way to prove what she'd said true, but with what accurate details she's managed to glean from everyone from a single glance of those enchanting eyes, her claim over her eyes' ability seems to be true. The fastest way to prove it is to simply beam back down to those desolate dunes, but with what Hanami's learned, it might not be a great idea to do, especially if that strange Rafflesia monster is still around. Then, in that silence, Hanami suddenly sighs. Seems like I'll need to go down there myself, huh? You're willing to do that? One of the elves asks, and Hanami gives her a shrug, as if she'd been expecting to do this beforehand. Fruel can only hope her trip goes well. Due to the new discovery you've made, Desolate Dunes has been elevated in difficulty. Recommended level to enter is now 85. From the moment that notification popped up, I knew what I needed to do. Still, at least its difficulty won't be as high as Remnant of Skypiea, so it should be easier. Should. Because as shown by Uriel, the recommended levels don't mean much. Well, whatever. Anyways, after using the elves' teleportation beam, I'm back in the Desolate Dunes, and it looks just as I remembered it. Dusty, empty of general life, and filled with crawling elf zombies capable of flinging magic at me. Those guys aren't really even a bother anymore though, since their magic is too weak to pierce through my magic resistance. That, and my new clothing's bonus is completely unfair. Kaldadine, rank C plus a dark blue scholarly suit designed using magical weaving, inspired by the clothing often worn by scholars or librarians in medieval fantasy tales. Made by the interweaving between thorium strings and hellstone strings, it's gained an incredible durability and tolerance against heat. Usually equipped in Vanity, slot note, created by Tsunaka Hanami when worn, causes all magical attacks under rank D to be completely nullified when worn, provides a passive resistance against heat. Though it won't defend against fire, overheating will never become a problem with magical weaving. The size of this suit can be adjusted freely, plus 55 intelligence and wisdom when worn, plus 20 vitality when worn. Well, it's not completely broken when compared to other worn items, but the fact that the effects actually work when it's worn in the Vanity slot? Phew, just imagining the stacking buffs from Vanity and Equipment slots is making me excited. Anyways, enough about my new clothes. Time to continue with the elf quest line. I swiftly recall where that weird Rafflesia monster first appeared, and with a goal in mind, I take off into the skies. Normally, I would have liked to spend some time grinding for EXP or training up my skills, but that can wait for later. For now, I have an entire civilization of elves waiting behind me, and I don't think I want to find out what happens when I fail the quest. Actually, on the topic of quests, why doesn't it give me what will happen when I fail? Does the system ignore it because I've completed too many quests? Maybe it thinks I can probably complete the quest without an issue. Maybe it's doing it on purpose, just so I can't know what will happen. Considering the many things my system has done to me recently, I'm wagering it's that third one. Ah, my mind's wandering again. Been doing that a lot lately. Shaking my head, I spot a certain opening to an underground cave and begin my descent. The cave itself doesn't look all that conspicuous, covered with vines and surrounded by piling piles of dust and sand. Of course, the aura it's exuding is another story. Even without trying, I can feel the presence of something coming from inside. Whatever that may be, I can't know, seeing as my mystic eyes can't seem to glean any information about it aside from the cave being strange and suspicious. Narrowing my eyes, I bring my staff from my inventory and begin my trek into the cave. My mystic eyes remain active to see in the darkness, while my hearing is stretched to its current limit, in case something in the distance makes a sound. My prana saturates the stone under me, structural analysis, going through and mapping every single opening this cave has. Information floods my brain as structural analysis continues its job. Caves. More caves. An opening with a small underground lake. More caves. Caves. Even more caves. A small narrow. Suddenly, my spell is cut off, the rebound lashing back, and I nearly trip from the suddenness of it all. Something is here. Tightening my grip on my staff, I hasten my steps, making my way to where my prana was cut off. As I go deeper, the prana in the air becomes heavier, more saturated, and it begins to physically affect the world, causing the stone to slowly chip away. I'm mostly safe from it due to my clothes, but I applied reinforcement on myself, just in case. Better safe than sorry, right? I continue my descent, and the air continues to grow heavier. The slow chipping of the surrounding stone soon turns into them outright cracking, the stone incapable of holding itself together under the intense pressure. The path turns bumpy and sharp, though it doesn't affect me much, seeing as I can just fly over them. Then, the descending slopes finally plateau and narrow, leading to a single narrow path into the unknown. Thankfully, I'm still thin enough to fit through, but it leads to me bumping my staff onto the sides occasionally, much to my building annoyance. It soon ends though, and I continue onwards. And there, at the end of the room is that same Rafflesia that caused this whole pandemic in the first place. It was, well, massive, for one thing, its width about that of a truck and as tall as an electric tower. The flower's petals are a deep blue, decorated by tints of green similar to the color of normal magic circuits. And hidden beneath it is a giant complex of vines, each as thick as an adult's arm. Grand Asia LV220, HP, 40, 500, 000/40, 500, 000. MP. Stamina. A strange titan of plant, living inside the damp underbelly of a cave. Its size grows in proportion to the amount of prana it can gather from the surrounding atmosphere. A complex twisting colony of vines exist under the flower, as if hidden by the beauty of the flower above. At death, the flower releases its spore, and though harmless itself, it will grow into another flower, slowly expanding its roots by absorbing the prana in the world that surrounds it. Yet the flower feels oddly empty, artificial. Strange. Note, the vines carry within them a paralyzing poison. Grows with how much prana in the air. What a wonderfully nasty ability that is. But that last line in the description pretty much confirms the leading theory I had in my head. The thing's artificial, made by what, when, and for what purpose, I don't know. Resolute, I take a step forward, and the stone under me breaks as thousands of vines rise from the stone below. The cave crumbles all around me, and I swiftly make my escape, flying up into the air and bombarding the incoming vines with magical rockets. But they do nothing. What? Evading a strike from a vine, I try again, firing a volley of sharp prana bullets at the vines, but the same result occurs. The bullets seem to almost disintegrate upon impact, the rigid shape breaking. My eyes widen as I see the prana be absorbed into the vines, and I come to a realization. Its absorption goes that far. Well, that just made this plant guy a whole lot more risky to fight. For further testing, I create a pair of bullets, one coated in lightning and the other shining with holy light. Both are fired, and just like the ones before them, they're swiftly absorbed. That made things even worse. But all's not lost, not yet. There's still a myriad of things I can possibly do, and a whole lot of weaknesses plants usually have that might become my path to victory. Swerving to the left, I bring out an ordinary sword and slash down one of the approaching vines. The sword makes it cleanly through, but the vines quickly merge back together, almost like a slime reforming itself. I cast reinforcement on the sword and try again, and the same happens, just with the added effect of stripping my sword clean of prana. A second later, the iron construct cracks and falls apart, and I can only blink in surprise. What? But I have no time to think as the wall behind me suddenly breaks to reveal a collage of vines. I bring out another sword and bat the encroaching vines as I fly away. And just like before, the sword cracks before it breaks completely. My mystic eyes flare, information floods my brain, and I come to another realization. It's using Gihen. Well, not exactly Gihen, but something close enough to mimic the effect. Which is basically just flooding my sword with its own prana before overloading it, but still. Damn. At least that effect won't happen on me though, since my magic resistance should dampen the effect enough for it to be nullified by my vitality, I think. Not sure if that's true or not, but I'm not willing to try and find out. What a truly terrifying enemy I'm facing. Had those elves encountered this superpowered version, most would have probably perished. Thankfully, I'm not like most normal people. Diving downward, I fly past several more vines as I bring out another sword. Voltaic charge activates, the sword is covered with lightning, and with the additional speed from my dive, I rush forward, delivering a powerful downward slash onto one of the flower's petals. Once again, the lightning is swiftly extinguished, and my sword breaks. However, unlike before, I can see a small mark left behind, still steaming from the plasma my strike had made. I smile. The flower seems rather confused as well, since all the mobile vines suddenly halt to a stop, and in an act that looks uncannily human, one of its vines reaches up onto the scar I'd caused. Then, it begins to shake before erupting in what seems to be anger, bright spores launched into the air as the vines lash about erratically. Still smiling, an idea pops into my head, and my smile widens just a bit more. Mental partition activates, with one keeping my body moving to avoid the lashing vines and the other quickly bringing up the item shop and browsing through its many commodities. Grinning, I bring out the wondrous item. A bottle, filled with good old whale oil. 100 of them to be precise. The monster realizes too late, and its lashing vines smash through the bottle of oil I drop, smearing most of the area in foul-smelling oil. I wince slightly at the smell, but I easily ignore it, having smelled worse things before. With a grin, lightning gathers at the tip of my staff, concentrating and releasing immense amounts of heat. The flower quickly catches on and tries to beat me down with the full force of its vines, but it's far too late. I aim the staff down, and at my command, the plasma fires off, hitting one of the soaked vines. And hell breaks loose as fire ravages through the air, jumping from vine to vine and burning everything away. I watch in satisfaction as the giant flower continues to burn away, before I notice the flames slowly dying out for no apparent reason. Blinking, and I come to my last realization for the day. Oxygen. Fire burns through oxygen and releases carbon dioxide. I'm inside of a cave, with a limited supply of oxygen. Of course the giant fire I've lit will quickly burn through the supply of oxygen, which also means that I'll also soon run out of oxygen to breathe. Sighing, I swiftly delve back into the item shop, and buy myself hundreds of oxygen canisters, tearing them open and letting the wonderful oxygen waft into the air. The fire grows back to its original glory, I can actually breathe again, and the giant artificial plant continues to painfully suffer as it burns. Finally, its HP reaches 0, and the giant plant lets out one last puff of spores before it burns away. The spores don't make it far, burning away together with its parent. You have slain, Grand Asia. 5,200,000,000 EXP gained, you have gained, Magic Core, X100, Asian Vines. And there's that. The EXP gain is negligible, the drops are quite interesting, the Magic Core, more so than the vines, and I barely wasted anything, my stamina already back to 100%. Overall, a very easy battle. However, I maintain my grip on my staff, reinforcements still cast on my body, my skin lighting up with bright green circuits. Though that giant plant is gone, the air remains saturated with prana, and the heavy atmosphere still remains. The source is still somewhere here, somewhere deeper. But enough of that. Most of the stone around me had broken apart, and with the plant gone, I can see a small opening far below, almost like a funnel leading to places unknown. It's a bit too small for me to fit through, so I expanded the small opening with a barrage of spinning prana missiles, churning the stone and flinging the dust into the air. With the path now sufficiently wide, I dive down through the hole. Immediately, the pressure in the surrounding air triples, and I begin to feel the weight pressing down on me. It's not enough to impact me in any meaningful way, but the fact that I'm even feeling something means that the pressure has bypassed magic resistance. Slightly worrying, but I'm not backing out. Now that I'm down here, there's only one path forward, a cleanly cut corridor leading to who knows where. Unlike the rocks from before, the stone the corridor is carved from remains stable and unbending in the presence of the incredible magical pressure. Seeing as there's some sort of enchantment placed on it, the durability is understandable. Letting go over gravity, I gently land on the stone floor and begin my trek forward. The magical pressure continues to grow the farther I walk, but I remain steadfast in my steps, unbothered. Then, I see light far ahead of me, a literal light at the end of the tunnel, and I hasten my steps. The pressure spikes, and I'm forced to use Morningstar to counter some of the downward forces pushing down on me. I run, my steps echoing through the tight corridor, and the light comes closer and closer. Before I finally make it, and all the pressure just vanishes, causing me to stumble and smash my face onto the head of my staff. Ack. It doesn't actually hurt, not even slightly, but the effect was still somewhat disorienting. Letting myself get used to the normalized pressure, I place my staff back into my inventory, as I take in the new room I've found myself in, and... oh, wow. There's a lot of artifacts here. It almost looks like a museum. The room is intricately designed, carved from marble and decorated with lines of gold. Short display pillars are placed by the walls, all with their own artifacts placed atop them, sealed under some unknown magic. All except one that is. One of the pillars is strangely empty, the item it's meant to display gone, and the seal broken. I attempt to use my mystic eyes on it, but much like the flower's strange lack of history, this entire room suffers under the same effect as well. I frown slightly. I should have trained my mystic eyes more. However, what's done is done. I'll make sure to spend some time grinding some EXP to level my mystic eyes of myriad perception, but I'll do that later. For now, there's a bunch of artifacts around me, and I can't just ignore them, can I? So I got to work, destroying the seals one by one with a simple cast of Gihen. I feel kinda bad actually. These seals seem like they're fairly complex, and here I am just overloading them with prana before shattering them, which is basically the magical equivalent of opening a lock by melting it with a flamethrower. Breaking the last remaining seal, I begin my inspection over the 11 artifacts still within this room. And, well, most of them are fine. They're pretty good actually, but at the level I'm at now, they don't provide any benefits that would actually help me. Doesn't mean I'll just leave them here though. There's only two that really stick out. Young Dragon Ring, Rank B, an ancient ring crafted from the melted talons of a young dragon, and bathed within its flaming blood. As anything crafted from a dragon, its aura is far too strong for any normal man to wear it, and it's said that those that do are turned into dragons themselves, their blood forcefully converted by the vengeful spirit that lies within the ring. When worn, triples your dexterity. If your dexterity stat is above 100, the effect will begin to degrade, until it gives out a maximum of a 50% increase to dexterity when worn. Those incapable of withstanding the might of a dragon will be taken down, their bodies converted into that of a young dragon. Note: when worn, your dexterity will be increased by 50%. Note: due to the skill, blessed by dragons, the secondary effect of this item is nullified. I think it's quite obvious why this was an artifact that caught my eye. I mean, even with the effect degraded to only a plus 50% increase to dexterity, that's still an insane 250 increase. The second effect being negated is also nice, but I'm pretty sure I could withstand the dragon's will with all I've gone through. Without wasting any time, I equip the ring on my left finger, and I shiver slightly as energy courses through my body. The effects are immediately clear. My reflexes have sped up even more, shivers crawl up my back as energy courses through my body, and my mind works even faster than it already did. Now, as for the second item. Loom of Neith, Rank B, a loom once owned by the goddess Neith. However, much like her nature, the true loom has never been found, lost to the passing of time. Instead, the legends she'd made from the loom materialized into a small charm, one that would bless its wearer with the skill and magic to weave their dreams into reality. However, something in your soul seems to shine. The loom of the stars, one located within the forge of your heart, cries out, wishing to merge with it. When worn, any creation created from any form of silk, leather, or the sort will always be rank D or higher. Note: the loom of the stars seem eager to synchronize with it. Something might happen if you do. The artifact itself isn't all that impressive. Age of Babylon pretty much does the same thing on a much wider scale, but that line about how it can merge with the loom of the stars is the one that's interesting. I wonder what'll happen. But that can be saved for later. One of the artifacts is oddly missing, which is most likely those normally harmless spores evolved to become so dangerous. Where that artifact is, and who could have taken it in the first place remains unknown, but I can't do much about it now. Maybe once my mystic eyes have leveled up more or some other development happens I'll return. For now, however, it's time to head back. Which means I'll need to go back through that prana-saturated cave again. And I also forgot to take pictures to bring back as evidence. Joy. Just an hour passes, and their device lights up. Frul swiftly rises from his seat, awaiting for the girl who'd taken up this task, and out from the light comes Hanami, looking none worse for the wear. If anything, she looks strangely excited, giddy to try out something. She then stops, sees the people around her, and quickly schools her features as she coughs. Well, everything worked out, she says with a shrug, earning questioning looks from the others. Did you find what caused it? At that, Hanami frowns slightly. Not quite, she says slowly, before elaborating. I found the big Rafflesia monster, and I also found this room filled with artifacts, but aside from that nothing else. She reaches into her pockets and pulls out several snapped pictures, mixed with them a single slip of paper, one that has a bright and colorful flower drawn on it. One of the artifacts is missing though, so that might be one of the causes, but aside from that, I got nothing. Frul takes the pictures and observes them. As she said, there are pictures of a cave, a carved corridor, and a room filled with artifacts, one of them strangely missing. He assumes the flower was this Rafflesia monster she'd encountered. It isn't quite a picture, but as she must have been fighting it at the time, her not being able to snap a picture isn't all that strange. Still. Could you have not used your mystic eyes, was it? Frul asks, internally wincing as pressure slammed down onto him at even the slight mention of those enchanting eyes. Hanami blinks. Oh, well, I tried, but the whole area is sealed. I'm not too sure, but when I try to use my eyes on them, their history is empty, somewhat like the flower. She then shrugs. Might be able to get more information when I train my eyes more, but for now, I can't get much. I see. In the end, more questions are made. What is this flower? What is that strange room Hanami had found? Who'd made it? Why is one of the artifacts missing, and who'd taken it? Frul sighs. He really wishes he'd bought that bottle of wine. By the end of the day, not much progress is made. He'd found out of the flower's name, but that only led him to question the whole situation. The spores that it releases isn't capable of interfering with organic materials. It can only grow on dirt and rocks, and its capability of absorbing magic only extends to the energies in the atmosphere. It shouldn't be able to take over an elf's body and corrupt their magic. It shouldn't, but it somehow did that. That missing artifact might have done something, but without them knowing what that artifact is in the first place, they couldn't do much. Which was why Frul disbanded the investigation early for the day. If there wasn't much they could find, they might as well spend the rest of the time doing something else more productive than simply sitting around frustrating themselves. That was when Hanami had brought out a cake from somewhere, saying that it was a treat for the day. Everyone had been eager to dig in, tired from their jobs, but they immediately ran into a problem. The cake was too fancy, too detailed, and definitely not fit for underpaid elves such as them. Frul had swiftly asked how much she'd spent on it, to which she'd sent him a confused glance, stating that she'd made the entire thing on her own. That was a surprise, but he stifled his feelings with a cough and gratefully accepted the slice she'd cut for him. The taste was wonderful. There were simply no other words for it. It reminded him of the food served at the great banquets he'd occasionally be invited into. And just like him, the rest of his co-workers expressed the same feelings, praising her for the wonderful cake she'd made. Surprised by the praises, the girl's cheeks pinked slightly, but she'd turned her eyes away and remained skeptical. I don't think it tastes all that good. Shiro's tastes so much better after all. Most dismissed it as her being humbled, but Frul couldn't help but wonder how amazing this Shiro's cooking is. She'd once described him as the ultimate chef, one whose cooking could satiate even the most powerful and demanding of kings, one that caused Hanami to stop and simply shiver in delight at the sheer thought of it. How godly must his cooking be? Frul shivered at the thought. Time passed. The cake was swiftly finished, and Hanami was ready to bid farewell, her magic activated as she began to rise into the air. Then, she said that she'd be busy looking for islands to claim one for herself. Frul went rigid. Hanami, you have an island claim key? He'd asked, already feeling the incredulity building once again. Hanami had tilted her head in confusion before she nodded, bringing out the famed item. Everyone went silent. Frul himself went near catatonic. He was pretty sure he heard someone faint behind him, but he didn't bother to look to see who it was. How rich are you? Frul croaked out, a headache throbbing through his head. She'd looked at him, confused. I mean, it's just tier 2, though. Everything went silent again. He was so done with this. Are you part of a royalty? He jokingly asked. Well, I have a friend who is. Frul internally sighed at the answer. He was so done. He was fairly sure his co-workers initiated some other conversations with the girl, but Frul had pretty much tuned out the world at that point. There are two types of wealthy individuals, those who flaunt their treasures, and those who don't understand how truly wealthy they are. His teacher had told him, and he finally understood what he meant by that second example. They'd soon bid farewell with one another, and Frul went on to drop by the bar he'd always found himself in. It's a quaint little thing, located out by the northern edge of the island, but it was his little abode, his little escape from all the hustle and bustle. Frul sips on the bottle of wine and sighs. Ija, a monstrous flower that absorbed the surrounding magic and spread its spores. Mostly harmless, but is extremely hard to fight using magic alone. There is no mention of it being capable of taking control of an organic body, no less one that belongs to a nature elf. And then there was that strange room Hanami had found, with one of its artifacts oddly missing. He deeply wishes the missing artifact is but a coincidence in this entire case, something that didn't really matter, but he knows not to tempt fate. The worst possibilities happen the most often, no matter what he feels about it. Hanami had theorized that it might be an artifact that forcefully causes something to evolve past its limits. Such an artifact would be extremely dangerous, no matter who uses it. Could that be why it was sealed within that room along with those other artifacts? But none of the other artifacts Hanami had brought back from there came even remotely close to how powerful this theoretical artifact is. Questions after questions after questions. It frustrates him. Bad day? The bartender asks, his lip quirked upward to a small smile, clearly enjoying the suffering and exhaustion etched onto his face. Frul sighs, nursing the bottle of wine he'd been drinking. Not bad. Tiring, he says as he takes a swig. The bartender hums. A lot of work today. You're one of the ones trying to find out what happened below, right? Fruel blinks, then nods. Well, I heard a strange rumor that a human had just recently became a citizen, and that she's working to aid your case. That rumor got any foundation? He asks. It's true. She's the one helping and diving into the world below. He says with a shrug. News of Hanami's citizenship isn't supposed to be some grand secret, but the council are wary of releasing the news. Elves and humans don't have some grudge against one another, but having a human suddenly integrate into Pedo Crowl would definitely spark up some controversy, or so they say. Fruel doesn't really care. Even if people began targeting the girl, he somehow doubts the girl would mind. Wait, how did you know? Fruel asks, narrowing his eyes. Hanami's presence has never been broadcasted to the populace, and the girl herself has never gone and interacted with elven kind. Whenever she wants to leave, she'd simply teleport, leaving behind no trace. How did he know? The bartender raises his hands in peace. Calm, sir. Calm. I'm not planning to spread it, so don't worry. Fruel maintains his stare, and the bartender finally sighs, putting down the glass he'd been wiping. Some men from the council dropped by yesterday, spoke about how the human girl was a surprise and all. And? I doubt that's everything. Made some plans on how to deal with her if she becomes a danger, talked about sending some enforcer. He hastily adds, but Fruel keeps his stare. How many people were there? 3. The bartender smiles wryly. That's it. I've got nothing left. Hearing that, Fruel leans back and takes a deep breath, taking into consideration what he'd just heard. The council were preparing countermeasures in case Hanami became an enemy, which made sense, but why were there only 3 of the 12 councilmen? Did they just happen to discuss their plans further on their own, or is there something else afoot? As much as he hoped it was the former, his gut told him otherwise. Sighing, Fruel takes another swig before he stands and leaves, dropping several point chips by the counter for the payment. It seems he won't be sleeping tonight. The winds stormed in wild abandon, uncaring for any that dared come its way. Day and night blended in twilight as the 2 birds stood atop the cliff. They could hear the distant crashing of the waves, the brash swaying of the grass. To jump off would mean death, to fall into the oceans and be crushed by the unrelenting waves. But Barbados had said to them, told them the secret to allow them to take off to the skies, and the twin birds swallowed their fears, and leapt. They opened their wings, feeling their feathers torn as the winds cut into them, before they're suddenly picked up and set high into the skies, rising past the thundering clouds. There, high above, the birds watched in awe over the distant line of the horizon, seeing the beauty of the setting sun that had hid behind the veil of thunder and rain. In elation, they flew back to the home they'd come from, and they cried to Barbados in happiness. We did it. All we missed was wind. One of the birds exclaimed happily, and Barbados gently laughed, cradling 2 of his creations. With a kind smile, he said to them, no, it was not the wind that you lacked, but courage to take off. He gently pet their wings, and above, the thundering clouds drifted away, the curse broken. To live your life, to fly to distant horizons, be brave, and I shall be there. He said, and the 2 birds looked to him in wonder. Barbados smiled once more, for that was the promise he'd given, one he'd give, then, now, and onwards until the end of time. Courage, huh? Wanda sighs softly, turning to look at the elaborate ritual circle she'd drawn on the floor. Its design is complex, a combination of 3 circles stacked over one another, with odd sigils drawn in the gaps. She's rather surprised she even managed to draw it without completely botching up the process. Before Ms. Hanami had left for Pedo Crowl, she'd given her this book, one that had the magic circle drawn on its first page and its details written in the pages after. It describes a ritual to grant one a pair of wings to fly. Whether those words are literal or not, she didn't know, but Ms. Hanami had said that it'd be beneficial if she was to venture out onto the other islands in this world. The circle has already been drawn, and the reagent to initiate the ritual is readied. All that is left is to step in and activate it. And Wanda is unsure, afraid of the unknown outcome. Even if Ms. Hanami had said that it was safe, even with how much she's grown since Ms. Hanami first began tutoring her, she was still afraid. What if she did something wrong? What if the ritual was incompatible with her? What if the ritual doesn't work entirely? But, tell me, why do you want to be strong? She remembered that day, when her family was splintered, when a piece of her life was broken apart. She wished to be able to do something, anything. She wanted to go to her sister and take her back, to protect her, much like she'd done for her. She wanted to fly away. It was not the wind that you lacked, but courage to take off. She'd made her promise before. She won't back down. With a deep breath, Wanda steps forward into the center of the drawn circle. With hope and anxiety brewing in her heart, her magic circuits flare to life, her skin burning with bright blue lines, and prana surges out from her and into the magic circle under her. The sigils come to life, the pair of golden premic feathers she placed on the two ends of the circle floats into the air. And Wanda cries out in pain as the magically enchanted feathers shoot into her back, digging through her flesh and connecting with her magic circuits. Her body burns, her senses blurs, and she can only grit her teeth as the world begins to turn. It hurts. The girl grit her teeth, grinding her jaw together, but she remains standing. She won't fall, she won't let herself fall. She decided to do this, even with her worries pulling her back and Ms. Hanami telling her of the possible dangers this process might bring. It might hurt, so much she wishes she'd drop dead, but she won't fall. Because this was nothing compared to the loss she'd suffered long ago. So she remains standing for what feels like hours, fighting with her everything as the ritual continues. Distantly, she feels a strange feeling growing on her back, feels her balance slowly shifting back, but she ignores them. As quickly as it began, it ends, and Wanda finally allows herself to fall onto the inactive circle. Then, with her heart brimming with excitement, she smiles. Slowly, she stands, stumbling slightly from the shifted balance she'd undergone, but she only smiles further. Because as she looks at her back, she sees a pair of golden wings, shining with magic and life. Kaleidoscope, skill book, requires 900 intelligence and wisdom to use, the second true magic, observation and operation of parallel universes. With this, one ascends beyond the dimensional plane, becoming one capable of traveling beyond the borders of the universe. The depth of this magic is forever unknown, for just like there are infinite universes laid within the great unknown, the things one could do with this magic are far too many to list. There have only been two individuals capable of wielding it, Kistur Zelrich Schweinorg and Tosaka Rin. And now, you have become one as well. Well, here it is, the one and only. I got this when I finally finished the quest about altering Shiro's fate, but I haven't even opened my inventory and checked it until now. Honestly, I nearly forgot about it, and it's only when I returned from Pedo Crowl did I remember. Well, that, and the fact that my wisdom was still about 60 points below the required number. But no more. After having my 65 extra stat points remain in my status, I've finally used them to bring my wisdom above 900. I'm actually somewhat afraid of what doing this might bring. Skills as big as this one usually affected other skills that are connected to it in some way. I have no way of knowing, my eyes incapable of taking in the scale of what might happen when I make use of this skill book and become a magician. However, is the unknown not the spice of life? So, with the innocent-looking skill book in my hands, I take in a small breath before tapping it, bringing up the familiar notification. Use item. Yes/no. With building resolution, I tap, yes. And everything exploded. Reality breaks around me, knowledge filling every corner of my mind. My eyes are forced open, mystic eyes flaring in activation, and I quickly activate, mental partition, to better handle the influx of information. My eyes see everything. I see the beginning of the universe, and the event behind it. I see the end, and what lies beyond it. I see the fabric of reality broken down into their origins, turned into concepts understandable using the stories and formulas humans have invented. I see the law of the universe in their purest form. Information continues to bombard my mind, and blood begins to leak from my head, but I remain steadfast, gritting my teeth as I braced on. I see the origins of this world, of the world Hanami comes from the universe my soul came from the universe parallel to them all, and continuing to every universe that has existed, that exists, and ones that will come to exist in a future no one could possibly know. I see demons, gods, divine beasts, and ancient monsters. I see beings from another world, servants sitting within the throne of heroes, and monsters living within the reverse side of the world. I see the lives of every conscious being that lived, lives, and will live. I see truth, concepts of the universe given corporeal form, and the will of the universe. I stand before the gates of truth, and before it, I see infinity, and something inside me shatters. Like a puppet with its strings cut, I drop onto the floor, my body frozen as I'm changed. My body, powerful it may have been, but it wouldn't have been enough. My magic circuits are forcibly altered, upgraded. My mind, one that's distinctly human, would never be able to handle the usage of true magics, so it is changed, expanded. Pain ruptures through me as I'm altered, but I stay silent, biting down on my lip with enough force to draw blood. Then, suddenly, it all ends, and for the first time in what felt like hours, I'm able to breathe. Everything hurts, which isn't much of a surprise. Having your body be remade isn't a very comfortable procedure, but I am still conscious, and that's quite a surprise. Seeing as I can't really move, I decide to bring up my status sheet, just to see what's changed and all. And, well, there sure are some fairly massive changes. High human, a human who has ascended past the natural limits any living being should have been unable to break. A human whose strength and power who'd begun to breach into the territory of the divine. A paragon of evolution, a mark, a sign that there truly are no limits any living being could never pass. As a high human, your level limit of 100 has been lifted. All EXP gain is doubled, all damage dealt is increased by 20%, and all damage taken is reduced by 20% with your existence, and through your influence, the barrier barring evolution can be lifted. Yep, that's right. I've evolved past being a normal human. That first line isn't all that special, since changing to other races would also lift the level cap, but the other lines are pretty damn interesting. Double EXP for everything is understandable, that 20% buff on all attacks is wonderful, and the 20% reduced damage I'll passively take will ensure I live on for longer. But that fourth line, what does that even mean? The barrier barring evolution can be lifted. What the hell does that mean? Then, slowly, the answer dawns on me. As living beings grow, their evolution would slow down as they reach their prime forms, but that is a trap, for there will always be a plateau higher than before. If what I assume is correct, then I can break down the wall stopping things from growing beyond their natural limits. Stagnant existences like gods could grow with my influence, and humans normally constrained to the limits of their flesh and blood can grow past their limits. I can't quite hold back a grin at the realization. Mystic Eyes of Myriad Perception LV 67, 15%, a pair of eyes granted to those who have awakened to their connections to the root, the well of all existence. A fragment of its infinity now resides in you, manifesting as a pair of eyes, a bright swirling blue. Through it, every and all things shall be open to you, and will understand any and all existence. Allows you to see the description of objects you glance at, allows you to analyze things you see at a glance, capable of viewing the history of any object, from its creation to the present, allows you to see through darkness and illusions, allows you to view beyond the boundary of the universe. Your eyes will always perceive the truth, no matter what. Using this on an object too high-leveled will hurt you. Note, due to the skill, Kaleidoscope, skill EXP gain has been doubled. As expected, my mystic eyes are changed as well by what I'd just gone through. That doubled EXP gain is kinda broken, especially since the bonus will be doubled again because of my new race. It's probably why the usage of my mystic eyes throughout the experience caused the skill to jump over 25 levels from where it was. There's the new unknown line on the bottom there, and, of course, there's also that line about me being able to see things from beyond this universe, but that's rather expected. And finally. Name, Tsunaka Hanami. Age, 17. Sex, female. Race, high human. Class, frowny face caster, empty. Level, 65 EXP 8 312 202 424/25 000000000. HP, 193 110/512 200 20488 HP/min, x2. MP, 103 122/244 400 23985 MP/min, x2. Stamina, 4%, 788% per hour. Strength, 787.5, plus 83.5, x2. Vitality, 788, x2. Dexterity, 505.1, plus 96.5. Intelligence, 969.5, plus 312.5. Wisdom, 922.5, plus 202.5. Luck, 232.8. Stat points, 5. Money, for 112, 045, 012 yen. Yep, look at that MP and MP Regen. Just, damn. Having my magic circuits be upgraded to Ranka was already great enough, even if it did hurt like hell, having my MP Regen be doubled as well. Now that's just overkill. Although, considering the horrors within and outside this plane of existence, I suppose something like this isn't something all that amazing. Still, I can't quite help but smile slightly, already wondering just what I can do with all these new changes. However, that can wait for a later date. There's some more changes I haven't covered yet, but I'm a bit too tired to do anything else. My stamina's gone down to 4%, my MP's only half filled, and my HP took quite a hit throughout that painful experience. I think it's ample time to rest, no? So, with a gentle sigh, I let my eyes close. You have slept over a comfortable wooden floor. HP, MP, and stamina fully recovered. Nice. NGH. Slowly, I push myself up, stretching my aching limbs as I do so. Sleeping on grass might be better than sleeping on a floor according to the system, but it sure doesn't make my body ache less after the nap. Yawning, I stand rubbing my eyes, I take a small breath, and with some excitement, I activate my mystic eyes, eager to see what the new improvements are like. And, well, it feels strange. Information over the multiverse is now presented, concepts normally impossible to be understood by the human brain now revealed. Where before only the facets of this reality are visible, I can now see beyond that, observing into worlds beyond that, and the void sitting between this world and the next. It's almost like looking within a funhouse mirror, with other reflections of similar universes surrounding every area of my sight, and just like a funhouse, each reflection is slightly different, slightly distorted. I guess that's why it's called kaleidoscope in the first place. That aside, it's nice that the floor was comfortable enough for me to fully recover my status. It'd be awfully inconvenient if I went to pedo crawl, all tired and stuff. Of course, a floor being comfortable isn't something normal at all. At most, it'll probably recover about 3/4 of my maximum. So why is this floor special? Actually, where even is this? That is something I can proudly claim to be mine, and also where my 1 trillion yen disappeared to. Sometime during the Fourth Holy Grail War, I'd promised Shiro to buy ourselves a house, you know, for us two to enjoy. The thing is, I don't really want to have a house down on Earth, especially with how turbulent the world is after what was essentially a spoiler to a possible apocalypse. So I decided to just buy one here in Uriel. The thing is, I don't want to just make a house on Dun Stadia. I think the space our house would take will be better used for other things there. I don't really want to just have a house in some other country, since I don't want to be tied down to it now. Which means that I just needed to buy my own island. The claim key wasn't all that much of a problem, at least at first. 15 billion isn't really much when I have 1 trillion. But then, rights came. There's special privileges I'm able to get as the island owner. Some can stop monsters from spawning entirely, one makes it so falling off is impossible, and another makes magical energy especially rich there, making the island the perfect place for training. Of course, me being me, I decided that I wanted to buy most of them. The problem? They're really expensive. Really, really expensive. I was confident in spending just 15 billion, but then it grew to 115 billion, then to 300 billion. Before I knew it, my spending had reached the trillions, and I can only stare in horror as I watch the last 15 billion fade away as I bought the island claim key. Seriously, if claiming rights like that is so expensive, then who the hell made Dun Stadia? The price for that place would have been crazy. Well, unless you're someone like Gilgamesh, that is. She can probably just pull out one of her treasures and easily buy an island with all the rights she wanted. Now, I might have bought an island, but I still didn't have the house. Luckily, this one didn't actually need a lot of money, so I didn't need to feel the anguish of watching the funds I'd begun to regain drop again. It also helped that one of the rights I bought, Swift Builder, gave me complete control on how to shape my islands and the structures atop it. I still had to give it the materials my house needed, of course, but with my proficiency in tearing down trees and ecosystems, the initial lack of building materials was swiftly solved. The house is based on the one Shiro had, just much bigger and filled with more things. As much as I would like it, I doubt only Shiro and I will be using this, so I made sure to fill it with as many things one might need. I'd explain more, but I'll save the finer details for a later date. Which finally brings us to the comfortable floor. That sure was a long tangent. Anyway, since I still had many things I haven't explored using Swift Builder, I decided to tinker around a bit. You know, see what some of the options will do. One of them basically enchanted the floor with magecraft, making the floor comfortable and warm. It's sort of a failsafe in case one of us tires out and just drops onto the floor. With both Shiro and I as inhabitants, that's probably bound to happen one day. And, well, that's pretty much it. What was I supposed to do again? Oh. Right, I need to go to Pedo Crawl and meet up with Fruel. Well, time to go. Wow, this place is pretty nice. Is it? It feels quite suffocating for me. Fruel comments back, and Hanami shrugs by his side. It had been a fairly normal day for the elf. He'd arrived to continue his work, notes from the investigation he made the night before neatly packed in his hands. Hanami appeared a couple hours past noon, looking just as energetic as usual. Though that may be, there was something different about her. She seemed to have gained something, her presence became bigger, fuller. Still, as he always does, he didn't ask. An hour passed, and a messenger suddenly appeared, sending them an invitation to meet with the current acting councilman. Apparently, they wanted to know about how much progress has been made on the case, though why they didn't simply come to the building they worked in was a mystery. Nevertheless, not long after they entered, 12 elves came in, bearing themselves with confidence and pride. All of them seemed to be new additions, replacing the older generations he'd come to know fairly well. He knows only barely of who they are, knowing their names and family but not much else. He doesn't really care if they're the new figures of authority. They are all faceless individuals to him. With a silent sigh, Fruel schools his expression. Good morning, Mr. Fruel, Ms. Hanami. The leading councilman greets. Good morning to you as well, sir. He says with a bow. Silently, he takes a glance to his side and sees Hanami casually waving at the man, either unknowing or uncaring of the annoyed glares coming due to the lack of respect. With the pleasantries completed, so begins their conference. The leading councilman asks about their task and he answers to the best of his abilities, though withholding the fact that Hanami currently holds the 11 artifacts she'd taken from that strange room down below the clouds. He doubts they'd appreciate that. He never truly liked these sorts of situations. The ones seated are always scheming, always looking for things that don't always exist. It's expected really, but he wishes the councilman could at least be somewhat discreet in their whisperings. Then, the conversation shifts. I see, then, Ms. Hanami, what say you? Will you continue to stay here in Pedo Crowl? He asks, a gleam in his eyes. She closes her eyes and hums, seemingly in thought, before frankly saying, nope. The leading councilman's eyebrow twitches slightly. Oh, and why is that? You said you have no further duties to this Fuyuki after its destruction, did you not? I'm a nomad. She says with a shrug. I have a house and all, and I have people waiting for me, but I move around a lot. I'm a bit of an adventurer, you see. Some I go on my decision, and others are trips I'm forced into by some circumstance. I've never really been tied down to a single place for too long. I see. That's a shame. You'd have become a wonderful citizen. He says, and Hanami simply shrugs again. Again, the man's eyebrow twitches, more obviously this time. Fruel can't quite hide the slight smile he has. He isn't sure if it's Hanami's tendency to act on her own or her disregard for the councilman's expectation that makes her such an interesting individual to follow. Perhaps it's a bit of both. Is that all, sir? Fruel decides to ask, and the man stares at him with some surprise at the sudden intrusion. Though it has been a pleasant time, I believe we must return to continue our analysis. Very well. Thank you, sir. And so, he turns to leave, Hanami following by his side. But the world suddenly shifts, sound turns to static, the walls around them paling and losing their color. Fruel feels something probing into his mind, reaching and digging in like some sort of mental parasite. Before it all stops, and Fruel doesn't to hide his wide smile. What? He hears one of the councilmen ask, one that distinctly sounds like Count Voskro, the man who's been attempting to become king. Fruel turns and sees the other councilmen frozen, their eyes blank and their face emotionless. You might have forgotten this, Voskro, but I'm a former member of the council. He moves his eyes to the man, who's now shaking, his lips pressed into a thin line. Council meetings such as this must be planned with all that attends it. Both the councilman and the one called in must be informed days before the actual meeting takes place. For a meeting to suddenly be told to us this morning, with no forewarning, I don't doubt many would find it strange. Voskro ground his teeth. Take them down. Immediately, the 11 other members of the council come to life, magic gathering around them. Fast they may be, but Hanami is faster. With speeds incomprehensible to the naked eye, Hanami blurs through the room, knocking the councilman unconscious with but a single hit with the hilt of her sword. She reappears by his side just a second later, smiling all the while, and Voskro swiftly pales as he looks at his unconscious comrades. Silently, he jerks his eyes towards him, and he looks down in fear as dirt and stones climb up his body. For now, do sleep. Fruel says with no short amount of amusement before tightening the climbing dirt and stone around the man's neck. It doesn't take long before Voskro falls unconscious. A dead end as well? Frul asks, and Hanami sighs in agreement, shutting her eyes in annoyance. Yeah. I mean, most of these guys are controlled by something, but whatever it is, it's able to escape my eyes. She says with a soft growl, grumbling in annoyance at the lack of information she got even with her newly empowered eyes. Either it's specifically made to counter my eyes, or... She leaves the sentence hanging as she opens her eyes. Once again, Frul feels a shiver creep up his back as he sees those shifting eyes, its blue now adorned with a ring of shards colored in bright gold. Whatever the girl had done last night, it had made her mystical eyes even more powerful than it already was, so much so that she proclaims it can see beyond this world. It could simply be hyperbole, but he somehow doubts that. The girl doesn't seem to be one to lie about such a thing. That aside, however, if she has become capable of seeing beyond this world, then that leaves two possibilities. Either the artifact that went missing was created with some specialized spell to counter mystical eyes like hers, or that artifact had somehow gone beyond this world, gone so far that Hanami's eyes are unable to track them. That second possibility might sound rather ridiculous, but seeing as there exists a new world under the clouds, the existence of other worlds even beyond that isn't so strange. Still, if the artifact did somehow go beyond what Hanami's eyes can track, then where did it go, and how? They don't have the answer to both, but Hanami has theorized that the one currently in possession of the artifact had gone through something known as the dimensional gap, the void between worlds. It's an area far too remote, far too dangerous, far too magical for any living being to even dare try and enter. The shifting space would tear your limbs apart, the incredible amount of magic there would crush you to dust, and the area so isolated that your soul would never be able to return upon death, instead swallowed up and destroyed. It's a rather frightening concept, one he immediately pushed back into the back of his mind. They spent the rest of the afternoon busied with the new events that had transpired, Hanami mostly sitting still as her mystical eyes worked their magic while Frul paced around the room, thoughts filling his head as he did his best to make sense of them. That, and come up with a reasonable explanation of why all the councilmen are suddenly unconscious. Frul sighs. You truly are evil, Hanami. Frul says, his eyes downcast and his posture slouched. He's clearly tired after the hours he spent convincing the other elves of the controlled councilmen, a process that wasn't helped by them being especially stubborn in their belief that the councilmen were perfect warriors and immune to being controlled. It's only when I appeared and talked to them that they finally believed it. Of course, while he was busy dealing with the fallout alone, I busied myself by the obelisk, browsing through the things that I could buy from it. Most of the cooler items are obviously currently out of my budget, but it's always fun to just see what future things I might be able to gain. And now that I'm back here, seeing his suffering, I can't help but grin. Why say that? Does my help mean nothing to you, Frul? I say back, and I watch him sigh. I laugh, much to his further ire. Well, just enjoy the rest of the day off. You've earned it. That I have, I suppose. He says with a tired smile, before turning to her. On that note, you'll be leaving soon, aren't you? Yeah, I'll be gone for a while. There's going to be some interesting things happening in the future. To be precise, I spent some time delving through the possible futures using my mystic eyes, a process that's thankfully been sped up due to its recent power-up, and it seems Shiro's going to be involved in another fun adventure. Being the person I am, I'm obviously going to join him, probably with Gil as well. I see. He frowns slightly, clearly not liking my leave since the investigation isn't quite done just yet, but as we don't have any further clues to work on, he can't help but accept it. Well, I'll hope for your continued safety, Hanami. And why would you? What? He halts, eyes widening in surprise at the sudden shift. With narrowed eyes, I turn to him. Why would you do so, I repeat, waiting for his reply as my mystic eyes come to life, the green of my eyes overtaken by an enchanting shifting blue adorned by gold. The man doesn't say anything. He doesn't understand, but he feels my power slowly leaking into the atmosphere, feels the pressure of the surrounding air begin to increase, and he takes several steps back. His steps are swiftly halted when he bumps against a wall, and he completely stiffens as I begin to approach. You know, just like you, I've been busy looking through the history of this world, trying to find something that might aid in our investigations. But, I didn't read through the logs at the obelisk, no. My eyes grow brighter, and cracks begin to form across the floor as my prana seeps into them. The obelisk is a physical object, and for how powerful it is, I doubt someone can't tamper with it, take out some key portions of history so that no one could know. So I peered into the fabrics of reality itself, because that can't be altered, it can't be remade, reframed. And you see. I stop right before him, my face just inches from his, and my lips curve to a small, menacing smile. You told me elves and humans are cordial with each other. Not friends, but not enemies. But I doubt something like the complete destruction of about half of the elven population at the hands of humans 30 years ago can be forgotten and forgiven so easily. It's even weirder that I can't seem to find any record of that in the logs. Wait, Hanami, what do you dash? Shoo. I cut him off, pressing a gentle finger onto his lips. Be quiet. I'm explaining, and it's quite rude. To interrupt. Fool goes completely pale, and my smile grows. Every single moment I stood in this country, I asked myself, why are they so nice to me? After all, 30 years shouldn't have been enough time to let a grudge of that scale be put to rest. I asked around as well, and everyone I asked gave me a similar response, one that told of the elves' cold demeanor to others. Why did you bring me in? Why are they so quick to accept me, to accept my claims? Why did they not question me further after I gave my photos as proof? I could have just fabricated them, made them up, but you asked nothing. Why did you get so comfortable with me so quickly? Why did the councilman ask me to become a citizen after such a short time? Why did the elves you tried to explain to deny your explanation, but accepted mine? Frul's eyes goes wide open in realization, and my smile grows to a smirk. Caught your attention, didn't I? Why do they listen to me so much? I continue, increasing the pressure in the air for further emphasis. Why are they so eager to talk with me, to listen to me, to learn about me? Because don't think I don't realize you've been probing me on information about my life, Frul. Oh, I know, and I've known for a while. Ah, the elf's really shaken now, but I won't let this end, not yet. So I pour more energy into the air, and the smell of ozone begins to fill the room we're in as lightning begins to crackle around us. You see, I have a very, very small question I can't help but ask. And that I is. I lean in close enough to feel his panicked breathing, and I outright grin. The councilmen are controlled, so what's to say all other elves haven't been controlled in some way either? Frul stops breathing entirely. After all, you're all so intent on dismissing other people, but you're so accepting of me. Isn't that weird? Isn't it also weird that you're not asking about that, at all? Frul's completely frozen now, his pupils dilating as something inside him shatters, and I finally pull away from him, a satisfied smile on my face. But, of course, that's just an assumption. Surely all other elves can't be controlled like those councilmen, right? Think about it, will you? I turn to leave, but I stop myself and add, oh, and I've burned every note you've created of me. It's flattering that you've noted down so much about me, but considering all of it is made without my consent, I think you can't fault me for burning it away. I won't hold you against it, but don't do it again, alright? Because if you do, then I'll make sure you won't be writing anything ever again. The room goes silent as the last of my lightning fades. Frul's completely frozen, and seeing him like that, I give him a deceptively cheery smile. Well, I'll be off now. See ya. And so, with my words said, I vanish, teleporting back to my home. Ah, that was fun. Due to special circumstances, the quest, an elven crisis, will temporarily be put on hold. Intimidation has leveled up x3. It had much started as a normal day for Saber. She'd woken up, somewhat later than intended due to the dysphoria of once again having an actual body. As it's been since they first began this journey, she woke to be treated by Shiro's wonderful cooking, enjoying the drool-inducing buffet whilst dutifully ignoring the strange looks she garnered from the others. She cared not for what they thought. She was a king after all. Though Irisville asking Shiro about when he'd be having children did make her stutter slightly. Shiro and her continued their journey around England, touring through the lands that her kingdom once stood. It was rather amazing, really. To see the civilization she'd left behind advance until what it is now was quite a powerful moment. Of course, they spent quite some time tasting the local cuisines as well, both for her own enjoyment and to aid her master in adding several more recipes into his repertoire. Then, as the sun began to dip past the horizon, they finally returned to the temporary lodgings everyone else was in. She'd given her greetings, made some small talk with Irisville and Mia, played a small game with Iliasville, and gave some advice for Sir Gareth to help her develop the familiarity with the spear Hanami had given to her as a placeholder. Well, a placeholder it might be, but its strength rivals that of a rank C noble phantasm, so Saber could only accept the fact with a wry smile. However, unlike usual, Shiro asked them to order some food instead of cooking it himself and swiftly fled into his room. As expected of such a sudden act, everyone was worried for the auburn-haired boy. Quickly following, she reached his room and his door. Just to see him glowing with bright, pinkish light, one that looks awfully familiar. Shiro's eyes snapped to hers, surprised, and she quickly broke out of her stupor and ran to his side. But alas, it was too late. The moment of indecision she made was enough time for Shiro to be completely engulfed by the light. In a burst of wind and flowers, her master disappeared, leaving only a single remaining flower floating to the ground. With a quickly building annoyance, she stepped forth, took the flowers in her hands, and crushed it. Merlin! She growled out in frustration. Somehow, she heard the distant echoes of gentle laughter, and it was only with all her built patience from years of dealing with the Magus that she managed to stop herself from destroying the temporary home she was staying in. Can't you, I don't know, give me something to analyze? Please. Zelrich hums, making a show of stroking his beard, before cheerfully smiling. Nope. Please. Nope. He repeats, and I groan out in frustration. Since I don't actually know how to use Kaleidoscope just yet, I immediately went out to seek the one that did. And I did. I found Zelrech, asked him to help me, and he declined. We've been doing this back and forth for about 5 minutes now, and it was slowly driving me to insanity. I just need the goddamn bastard to do one trick, and I'll be able to analyze it and use it as a template to try and get to Shiro. If you don't learn this kind of thing on your own, then isn't that cheating, Hanami-chan? My gamer is a cheat. I retort back, the vampire laughs, and I do my best to restrain the scream of frustration that's quickly bubbling in the back of my throat. Stoicism has leveled up. Seriously? Besides, don't you already have the perfect inspiration to take from? He asks. I stare at him, confused, and he continues, Hanami-chan, what have you been fighting against for the past months? The Grail? Grinning, he nods. But that's stupidly inefficient. My MP won't be enough, and I'm not stupid enough to try and gather mana from the air. Well, technically, it is possible, but it'd take an insanely long time, which would lead me to missing out on whatever trials Shiro is going through. And wouldn't that be an extremely anticlimactic way to end things? Then, Zelrich outright laughs. Of course not. He says jovially, and I can quickly feel my ire building again. Tell me, Hanami-chan, what's the purpose of the Grail? The purpose of the Grail? To gather enough magical energy to try and punch a hole towards the root, right? Zelrich blinks. Well, yes. He says with a wry smile. But often than not in the Nasuverse, the Grail is used for everything else other than its intended purpose. Now, what is its most famous usage? The Holy Grail War. I answer simply, and he nods. What do you do in the Holy Grail War? You summon servants, and battle, and then probably destroy the Grail because some stupid people decided to summon and remain you. I say, and he nods again. Where is the damned vampire trying to go with this? And how does a summoning work exactly? Well, the Grail reaches into the Throne of Heroes, takes out a copy of the hero's spirit origin, and sends out that copy under one of the 7 classes. Usually. On the Magus side, they prepare the summoning circle, the reagent, and dash. Suddenly, something clicks in me, and an epiphany shines through. My mystic eyes flare to life, and immediately, it begins to scan through the possibilities, seeing if the solution I thought up was even possible. It might dash, no, it should definitely work. I think I get it. I say, and with a smile on my face, I bid my farewells to the smiling vampire and quickly make my way to Gilgamesh, who's already sitting atop Vimana, our destination set to the temporary lodging Saber is currently in. A gamer, without the coveted, gamer's mind, and gamer's body, yet one who's become capable of standing atop the same plateau. Zelrich looks to the slowly fading wind trail, and his smile becomes just a tad bigger. How interesting. She is, isn't she? He hears a gentle voice say in his mind, and he closes his eyes. Hasn't it been a while, system, is it now? Unoriginal, I know, but it doesn't really matter. He can almost imagine it shrugging as it says so. Besides, the girl's reached into the deeper parts of Uriel now. There's not much I can do for her. I guess so. He says, softly. I guess so. They lapse into silence for a moment, before System speaks up. There's not much you and I can do at this point, not without breaking the world, that is. Like what you did when Hanami's head was chopped off. Hey, at least fate still binds her at that moment, so I could influence the world as much as I wanted. It's a weak explanation, but Zelrich ignores it. Nevertheless, the curtains are about to be lifted, and conflict will soon come knocking on her doorstep. Will she be ready, I wonder? That is quite the mystery, isn't it? System says with excited anticipation, and Zelrich can't help but smile excitedly as well. So, you knew. Saber says softly, pinching the bridge of her nose to try and relieve the building stress. Hanami, who'd appeared several minutes with Gilgamesh, can only smile wryly. Somewhat. My eyes aren't all-powerful, sadly, and I can't predict that the future I saw will come true at all. But it did. Saber says. With a sigh, Hanami points a finger at the archer beside her, who's currently far too busy playing with her gaming device. She came, which was something I didn't really expect. She explains. Though, considering that she can also somewhat see into the future, something like that isn't all that surprising. She then adds. Isn't that just a minor thing, she wants to ask, but she quickly realizes how stupid of a question that'd be. The appearance of Gilgamesh in any situation was a giant deviation from any previous plan. Saber sighs. So, what do we do? If what you say is true, then he's gone beyond this world, right? A group of gasps came from the others at the table, but Saber ignores them. Well, no worries, I asked Zelrich to give me some pointers on what to do, so getting to Shiro shouldn't be too hard. I think. At the mention of this, Zelrich, most of the others sitting with them froze, and Waver in particular seems to have become absolutely catatonic. Saber can only stare at him questioning, wondering why. So, can we go now? Saber asks again, pressing her thumb down on the table to try to relieve some of her building worry. Such impatience, where did your kingly attitude fly to, Saber? Gilgamesh says with a scoff, but then smiles at her. But perhaps such a change isn't a bad one. Worry over a cared individual isn't wrong in any way. Well, don't worry, we can get started at any time. Hanami adds with a smile. Got everything you need? I do. Alright, nice. The girl says, and with a shower of light, her clothing shifts, turning from some casual garbs into a smart scholarly suit, with the magical purple scarf wrapped around her neck. Once again, the girl shows another noble phantasm in her arsenal, but Saber couldn't even muster any energy to be surprised. Is constantly pulling out new noble phantasms her true power? Whatever the case might be, it does make the girl look quite dashing, if she does say so herself. It makes the girl seem completely different, as if the cheery girl that's been sitting there before is suddenly switched by an aristocrat, one whose presence exuded grace and wonder. So, got any big open space for me to use? There is. There's an empty plot a couple blocks down the road. No one's used it in years. Kiritsugu helpfully provides. Just be wary not to draw attention to yourselves. Ah, that one, okay. The girl mutters, nodding as she remembers which one Kiritsugu mentioned. And don't worry, I'll just set up an empty ID, and everything'll be good. She says, and at that, Kiritsugu nods, returning to the newspaper he'd been reading. Saber blinks at the sudden end, wondering what this empty ID Hanami mentioned is, and also why Kiritsugu knows such a thing. Actually, isn't the man rather relaxed at the moment? Didn't his son just get kidnapped to another dimension? Well, alright, let's go. With an excited smile, Hanami bounces up and turns to leave, Gilgamesh and Saber following just behind her, but Sir Gareth quickly stands up. Wait, please let me follow you, Master. Nope, can't let you do that. She says, and quickly continues before the night could continue. I need an anchor to return back to this dimension, you see. I mean, I have Francis' connection to pull from as well, but extra insurance won't hurt, right? Hanami explains, but Gareth clearly still remains stubborn in her decision. Seeing that, the girl sighs, dropping her smile. Besides, I need you to protect them all, you know. I mean, just having the Magus killer be here should be enough to deter most from coming, but the world's rather turbulent at the moment. We have no way of knowing what will happen. Placing a hand on Gareth's shoulder, she smiles. Do that for me, okay? Okay. She finally says, if rather reluctantly. Hanami chuckles softly, before suddenly pulling out a book and handing it over to the knight. Tell you what, try learning this while I'm gone. What is this, master? It's a book on Chain Dragon Lightning, a powerful lightning spell. It's not quite your style, but I think it'll benefit you greatly, since there doesn't seem to be any underlying requirement to learn it. With a goal now tasked to her, Sir Gareth nods with a resolute smile. I'll make sure to do so, master. Good. Well, we'll be off then. Stay safe. She says, waving her hand before leaving out the door, Gilgamesh and Saber by her side. The trip there's done in silence, each of the three busy with their own things. Hanami seemed to be preparing for whatever it is she'll be doing, her mystic eyes activated, shining with enchanting blue light. Saber busied herself in her mind, grasping to feel where the connection to Shiro led to, while making sure to light every single curse she knew at the damned magus of flowers. And Gilgamesh is busy in her own world, continuing her games on that portable console of hers. How she hadn't bumped into something was a miracle. After a couple minutes, they make it to their destination. As Kiritsugu said, it's an empty plot, clearly meant for a house, but left behind and remaining empty. Empty ID, Saber hears the girl mutter, and the area is immediately surrounded by a familiar seclusion-bounded field. Ah, so this is what an empty ID is. Well, everyone ready? Hanami asks, magical energy pooling all around her, lightening the area in a vivid, bright green. I am. Saber says. A king is always ready, Hanami. Gilgamesh adds in, though her eyes are still locked to that gaming console of hers. Hanami nods. Alright then. Saber, focus on finding where Shiro roughly is using your connection to him. She says, and seeing Saber nod, she turns to Gilgamesh. Gil dash. I know, do not worry. The Golden King says, finally placing her games back into her treasury. She smiles at the girl, and Hanami smiles back. Slowly, Hanami takes a breath, and with magical energy pooling all around them, she stomps her foot onto the dirt. Light shines from under them as a giant magic circle forms, one created from prana and engraved with hundreds of intricate sigils. Silver and iron to the origin. Gem and the Archduke of Contracts to the cornerstone. Hanami begins, her words reverberating through the air as she speaks. This is. The ancestor is my great master Schweinorg. The magic circle under them comes to life, beginning to spin as its purpose is slowly being spoken. The intricate sigils light up in a shower of colors, and the space around them contorts, snapping and folding. The alighted wind becomes a wall. The gates in the four directions close, coming from the crown, the three-forked road that leads to the kingdom circulate. Reflections of the world begin to form in the air, each showing a slightly different past, a slightly different outcome, all converging into one muddled image. Shut, fill. Shut, fill. Shut, fill. Shut, fill. Shut, fill. Repeat 5 times. Shatter once filled. Webs of magical energy shoot forth, connecting to their legs. Saber shivers slightly, beset by the sudden feeling of an alien presence intruding into her soul. But she remains silent, her mind only focused on Shiro, on the bond they created, one that went above all. So I announce, ourselves are tied, our fate long past intertwined. It's a departure from the original, an incantation altered to fit the purpose Tsunaka Hanami needed it to fill. Despite that, the power behind it is no less than before, now stronger with a renewed purpose. For that is my oath. Through me the good and the evil will come together, brought together before the horizon of reality. Through thick and thin they persevered. Through deafening silence and raging thunders they'd fought. Through all a bond was forged, one stronger than all. So let the world be bent, let us twist the machinations of fate, until all is returned. Vard Kavshiri. At its name, the spell is invoked, and the world around them is bathed in light. Through separation, union will be achieved. The reflections of the kaleidoscope shine to you, and through it, you shall never be lost ever again, you have gained the skill, Vard Kavshiri. If you like this content, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you later, bye bye.